Today, the discussion continues about the hacker attack that the FIA suffered. Indeed, someone managed to access Max Verstappen's personal data, and in today's video, we will look at how it happened, what the consequences will be, and we will also see new rumors from Maranello, both concerning the 2026 engine and the driver market. Before we begin, please leave a like for support, and now let's see everything in detail. Someone managed to access Max Verstappen's personal data, and not only that, the official FIA portal, where sensitive documents of drivers like passports, licenses, and private contacts are stored, has been breached. But before you imagine a data theft or a worldwide scandal, here's the most absurd part. The hackers didn't want to steal anything. Their goal was to demonstrate how easy it was to breach the FIA's cybersecurity, and thus the federations. Among the computer researchers known in the cybersecurity sector, Nagli, Sam Curry, and Ian Carroll identified what themselves described as a serious vulnerability in the FIA portal. Nagli, who on X presents himself as head of threat exposure at wits.io, explained that it took just 10 minutes to enter the system and access the private data of all Formula 1 drivers, starting with Verstappen. Yes, 10 minutes to enter where there should be the highest security measures in world motorsport. Nagli published everything online with a direct message. We found a way to access Max Verstappen's passport, license, and personal data, along with those of all other Formula 1 drivers. It took just a simple security mistake, and he was quick to clarify. We stopped after verifying the vulnerability and informed the FIA to fix it. Basically, an ethical hack, a controlled demonstration that serves to expose security flaws before someone with real intentions of theft or espionage does. But how did it really go? The three hackers entered the portal where the FIA keeps internal documents, from driver identification files to contact data, including licenses, permits, and internal correspondence. Extremely sensitive material, considering these are drivers who move around the world with multi-million-dollar contracts. Once inside, they could have downloaded anything. But they didn't. They only took screenshots to prove the flaw and immediately notified the FIA, which, to be acknowledged, reacted in less than 24 hours by closing the breach. A spokesperson for the federation then confirmed. The FIA became aware of a cyber incident related to the driver categorization portal. We immediately took all necessary measures to secure the data and reported the incident to the relevant data protection authorities. The agency also reached out to a small number of drivers involved. Even though it didn't specify who, the important thing is that, at least officially, no information was downloaded or disclosed. But it's not the first time this has happened. In fact, last year the FIA suffered a similar attack when some internal email accounts were breached through phishing. Even in that case, there was talk of unauthorized access to personal data. But the actual extent of the breach was never disclosed. Back then, just like now, the Federation had notified all the French and Swiss data protection authorities. And what does all this mean for Formula 1? It's a clear signal. Even the ultra-technological and hyper-controlled world of Formula 1 is not immune to cyber attacks. Drivers and teams now handle mountains of sensitive data, from contracts, passports, biometric data, to private telemetry information. And every flaw can become a huge problem. And think about it, if a group of researchers took 10 minutes to enter, what would happen if someone with less noble intentions did? The FIA has guaranteed that it has strengthened all security measures, talking about policy, security by design, i.e. systems built with integrated security from the start and massive investments in data protection. But doubt remains. How is it possible that such a serious vulnerability existed in an official worldwide portal? There is also another detail that is thought-provoking. The attack occurred in June, but the news only emerged now, in October, after the researchers decided to publish the story. This means that for months, the FIA handled the matter in absolute silence, notifying only those concerned. And if they hadn't been ethical hackers, it would have gone much worse. And we know that Lewis Hamilton will not run in Free Practice 1 in Mexico and will be replaced by Antonio Fuoco. So let's hear his words together. Lewis Hamilton will not participate in the Free Practice 1 session of the Mexican Grand Prix. In his place, Ferrari will send Antonio Fuoco, a driver with extensive experience in the endurance program and winner of the 24 Hours of Le Mans 2024, onto the track. And it's a decision that many call the worst-kept secret in the paddock. But in reality, it hides a precise and mandatory logic according to FIA regulations. Every team during the season is required to field a rookie, a driver who has competed in no more than 2 official Grand Prix races, and at least 2 Free Practice 1 sessions for each car. It's a way to give young drivers experience and allow teams to test new talents on a real track. In the case of Ferrari, Charles Leclerc has already given up the wheel twice this year to Dino Beganovic in Bahrain and Austria. This means it's Lewis Hamilton's turn to skip a session, and the choice of Mexico came precisely to close the rookie practice. For Antonio Fuoco, it will be a special day. It's his first official appearance on a Formula 1 weekend over 10 years after his first test with Ferrari. Number 1, a symbolic return for a driver who grew up in the Maranello Academy, who over the years has quietly contributed to the development of the single-seater, both in the simulator and in endurance projects like the 499p hypercar. Fuoco himself described it as a moment of personal and professional pride. Driving Lewis's car and sharing the box with Charles, like in the days of Formula 2, is really special, he said. It will be a Friday I will never forget, a reward for all the work done behind the scenes. Number 2. His presence is not just symbolic. The real goal will be to collect valuable data for correlation with the simulator. Fuoco will test the aerodynamic and mechanical settings of the SF25 in real conditions, helping the Maranello technicians compare the virtual results with those on the track. A fundamental step to improve setup accuracy and optimize strategies in upcoming races. My main contribution will be to provide a useful reference between the simulator and reality, explained Fuoco. Working with Lewis's engineers will also help me grow as a tester and perfect the technical sensitivity that I will bring back to Maranello. Number 3, Fuoco has been an integral part of the Ferrari project for years, following a complete path from the Youth Academy to Formula 1 development tests to the hypercar that brought the prancing horse back to the top of the world at Le Mans. A driver who has never had the media spotlight of the main drivers, but has contributed significantly to the development of Ferrari cars in every category. Looking back, I can say that these years with Ferrari have been unique. We have come a long way together, he said. Being an official part of a Formula 1 weekend with the Ferrari team is an incredible feeling. It's the dream of every Italian driver. Number 4. With this decision, Ferrari completes one of Hamilton's 2 mandatory outings, but one still remains. And here comes the interesting part. Where and when will it take place? The next 2 stops, Brazil and Qatar, are 2 sprint weekends with only 1 hour of free practice. It's impossible to bring in a rookie in these contexts. Even Las Vegas, being a street circuit with a complex nighttime program, is not ideal for debuting a newcomer. In short, the only realistic option remains Abu Dhabi, the last race of the season. Almost certainly, Hamilton will again have to hand over the SF25 to a young Ferrari driver to complete the regulatory requirement there. Number 5. The news has not created internal tensions. Hamilton actually supported the decision and said he was ready to provide feedback to Fuoco to optimize the data collected. Mature and leader-like attitude, consistent with the role he is having at Ferrari, not only as a driver but also as a technical mentor and experienced voice for the team. Leclerc, on the other hand, will take to the track to compare data between simulators and the track with the hope that Ferrari can improve race pace after Austin. And so Ferrari arrives in Mexico with the hope of having resolved stability issues and being more competitive on race pace. Let's see together what work has been done at Maranello and what has emerged from the simulator data. Number 6. Has the SF25 really solved its stability and tire management issues, or was the podium in Austin just an illusion? At Maranello, they believe they have made progress, but the Hermanos Rodriguez circuit is one of the most challenging to determine if progress is real or temporary, because here, between the thin air and fast corners, thermal management of the tires becomes a real technical trap. The Austin weekend gave Ferrari some breathing space. Leclerc reached the podium, and Hamilton with the same SF25 showed a finally competitive pace. But despite the result, Maranello engineers still don't fully understand how the car reacts to setup changes. Leclerc himself clearly stated it. We have improved, but we don't know exactly why. Number 7. The potential is there, but it's unstable. The car changes behavior from day to day, and at certain moments, especially in fast corners, it seems to lose aerodynamic consistency, as if the load shifts too quickly between the 2 axes. But Mexico is not just any track. Last year, Sainz took pole position with the SF24. And that data is the foundation of today's team's work. The SF25, in fact, was born as a revolution of that car, with different suspension logics, but with a wider aerodynamic window. This in theory, but since the beginning of the year, Ferrari has always had balance issues. In fact, the biggest problem is that in medium-fast corners, the SF25 remains vulnerable. Number 8. The second sector of the Mexican circuit, the most technical one, is precisely the critical point. Here, stability, traction, and perfect thermal balance between front and rear are needed. And so far, Ferrari has never managed to find true consistency on these parameters. Engineers might opt for a very loaded setup, because we know that thin air affects Mexico, so it's important to find load and rear grip. But at the same time, Maranello engineers have confirmed that they want to find top speed and traction, even at the cost of sacrificing some stability in fast corners. A risky but necessary choice if they want to stay ahead of Mercedes and McLaren on the main straight of over 1.2 kilometers. Number 9. Everything revolves around the mechanical setup and ride height. In Maranello, they know well that a small mistake in these parameters is enough to completely lose the ideal operating window. And it is precisely this window that Ferrari seems to have finally widened after Austin. During the Texas race, the SF25 responded better to temperature changes and lateral loads, a sign that the correlation between simulator and reality is improving. But Mexico is an extreme test bench because here the tires work in opposite conditions. In the driven sections, they overheat. In the long straights, they cool down too much. And finding a balance between these two extremes is very difficult. This is the real Achilles heel of the SF25. The problem is not only the wear, but the speed with which temperatures change from one sector to another. In the first section, with violent braking and short accelerations, the front tires tend to cool down, losing grip on entry. Cold. Then, in the middle sector, heat builds up on both axles and the car starts to lose grip. Finally, in the third sector, the slowest one, the wheel spin on exit overheats the rear, throwing the entire setup out of balance. In short, the SF25 lives on a knife edge, too cold at the front and too hot at the rear. A problem that was managed well in Texas, despite higher ambient temperatures, but in Mexico, with altitudes and thinner air, it might come back to bite. However, there is a weapon that could help Ferrari, namely curve riding. The SF25, as seen at Imola and Monza, manages to use the curbs very well without losing stability. And this can make a difference on the Mexican track, especially in the first sector, where precision in support during direction changes is crucial. On the aerodynamic level, it's likely that Ferrari will maintain the medium-high downforce rear specification already used in the last two races, a configuration that seems to fit the characteristics of the car well and currently represents the best possible compromise between stability and speed. In short, Ferrari arrives in Mexico with good feelings, but with balance still to be tamed. The key to the weekend, which they are convinced they have found in Maranello, is managing the unstable thermal balance of the tires. And while they are working on the setup and configurations to use in Mexico in Maranello, they are also working on the 2026 engine, and new rumors are emerging. Obviously, there is maximum secrecy around next year's project because it could shift the balance of Formula 1 in 2026. According to rumors, Ferrari is working on a completely revolutionary engine with a defined intake solution that those who have seen it describe as top secret. If everything works as planned, it could bring the prancing horse back to the forefront in the era of the new rules. In fact, the most important compromise to find will be between engine, chassis, and aerodynamics. The cars will have to be lighter, more sustainable, and much more hybrid. In fact, 50% of the engine will be the electric part, and the other 50% the thermal part. The fuels will be completely sustainable, and there is active aerodynamics at the front and rear. And in Maranello, a cylinder head in aluminum alloy is being developed with a secret intake system, internally defined as revolutionary. A key component that should improve the performance of the internal combustion engine in a context where the thermal contribution will be 50% compared to today. In practice, Ferrari is trying to find a way to make the engine breathe better, a more efficient, more precise airflow, and above all, optimize for the limits imposed by the new regulations. And the key is all in managing pressures, intake temperatures, one of the most complex points of 2026. The idea of Wolf Zimmermann, a German engineer in charge of Ferrari's thermal engine development until today, who had proposed an innovative steel head, a solution never seen before in Formula 1, has been shelved due to reliability issues. The choice to switch to lighter and more tested aluminum instead of steel came only after several months of delay, and this forced Ferrari to catch up with Mercedes, which, according to paddock rumors, was ahead in the development 2026. In fact, to give an idea, Mercedes would have already completed the first cycles on the dynamometer, while Ferrari is still validating the new intake architecture. A race against time, but with an ambitious goal: to surprise everyone with a solution never seen before. And Wolf Zimmermann will go to work at Audi. Let's see how Audi is doing with engine development, especially since Mercedes and also Honda have gained an advantage over Ferrari. According to the latest rumors, Audi's 2026 engine could already be at a disadvantage compared to Mercedes, and not by a small margin. Rumors talk of over a 30 horsepower difference, an enormous gap in an era where every single horsepower counts. From that season, the Ingolstadt company will complete the merger with Sauber, taking full control of the Swiss team, which will effectively become the official Audi team. An ambitious project born to bring Germany back to the top of Formula 1 after Mercedes' golden era. However, according to internal sources, the first bench tests show a significant power difference between Audi and Mercedes. The Brackley engine would have already reached 420 kilowatts, about 571 horsepower, while Audi would be between 540 and 550 horsepower, a deficit of 21 to 31 horsepower that seems small. But in Formula 1, it's an eternity. For comparison, in 2023, the Renault engine, the weakest of the lot, was 23 horsepower behind the best. In short, Audi risks starting in the same position Alpine was in 2 years ago, far behind. So, what's happening in Nürburgring? The operational headquarters of Audi Formula 1 is located in Nürburgring, where the power unit program is in full development. Internal sources talk of constant bench tests aiming to exceed the 400 kilowatt threshold and ensure reliability before power. New team principal Jonathan Wheatley, formerly of Red Bull, confirmed that the project is on schedule, but admitted that it's still too early to talk about actual performance. In December, Audi will perform the first coupling between engine and chassis, a fundamental step to understand the dynamic and thermal behavior of the power unit. Only then will it be clear if the 30 horsepower gap is real or partial. And here comes the most interesting part. Audi is heavily recruiting from Maranello 2 key figures from Ferrari, Wolf Zimmermann and Lars Schmidt, respectively head of thermal engine research and his deputy. They will leave the prancing horse at the end of the year to join the Audi project. In Germany, they will find Mattia Benotto, already appointed Chief Technical and Operating Officer of Audi's Formula 1 program in 2024. Together, they will form a high-level technical trio. Benotto as global coordinator, Zimmermann as the mind behind the internal combustion engine, and Smith as the head of hybrid systems. A clear signal. Audi aims to become competitive in a very short time. However, we know how difficult it is for a new manufacturer to catch up with rivals. Mercedes is already months, maybe a whole year ahead, and Ferrari has chosen to let go of Zimmermann and Smith also because they have a new competent project in Maranello. As we mentioned earlier, with an aluminum cylinder head and a new intake system. We know that the Brackley team started developing their 2020 C6 engine as early as 2022. Internal sources speak of simulation tests already completed with impressive results. As we heard a few months ago, Toto Wolff said that at maximum speeds, with the engine at full capacity, they can reach up to 400 kilometers per hour with this low downforce configuration engine. But we know that the FIA has introduced a special program for 2026 called a Duo, which aims to reduce the gap between engine manufacturers. In fact, those who fall behind in development will have extra hours of bench testing, extraordinary updates to power units, and even exemptions from the cost cap for those who demonstrate reliability issues. The very latest news I wanted to share is that Lawrence Stroll has stated that George Russell will never race for Aston Martin. We know that Russell has renewed with Mercedes with a multi-year contract, so he is not currently looking for another team. However, we know that due to 2 personal events that happened in the karting world 15 years ago between Stroll and Russell, Lawrence Stroll will never want George Russell in his team. And this could also change the driver market in the future. Let me know in the comments your opinion on all the topics we covered in the video. As always, I remind you to leave a like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any videos on the channel. That's all from Rasta here. See you in the next video.